Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. This must be review number 60 odd that I'm doing from them, and I've enjoyed the beers that I've had from them over the years, but the one we're trying today is a style that I've never had from them before, and it's a style that I've been really getting into again over the last kind of 18 months or so actually. So for this one, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in because, you know, it's channel tradition when it comes to the Gothenburg beers. And for this review, we are going to return to Stigbergets Bryggeri once again, who are probably one of the best known Swedish breweries these days. This beer is the latest release from their new Ringöbräu series, which seems to be German traditional beers, and this one is called the Ringöbräu Helles. So it comes in at 4.5% ABV. And as the name suggests, it is a German, Munich, I guess you could say as well, style Helles lager beer. So yeah, I think this should be really interesting. This beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. Last month we had the Rauch beer, which was quite interesting. That had quite a few kind of checked Mavi sort of German Schwarzbier elements to it, so it was a bit more of a kind of bready and Schwarzbiery type Rauch beer than the likes of Schlenkerland, Spezial and things like that. But it was a really interesting one actually. I did enjoy that. But as you'll know if you've been watching the channel over the last little while, I've been getting really into my lagers again over the last 18 months, 2 years or so, and yeah, this is one that just really piqued my interest. I love a good Munich Helles, I love a good Dunkel as well, so I'm curious to see how this kind of series of beers from Stigbergets progresses over the next little while. I wonder what we'll get next month. Maybe a Dunkel or a Schwarzbier, maybe a Doppelbock at some stage as well. That would be interesting. But in recent times they have been producing a few different traditional beers. We've had a Trippel, we had a barley wine, and we also had the Pilsner, and all of which I thought were very nicely done. So curious to see how these guys do the Munich Helles style beer, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson. So the pair own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino and the Hagbjörns Cafe, which can be found on Linnegatan in Gothenburg, and these both opened back in 2007. The building in which they can be found is actually an independent cinema, and I didn't know this until I actually went to visit it. So if you want to have a little look and see what the place is like, you can check out my out and about video that I did. That one was filmed mainly in Bar Kino, which is in the basement, but I did go up and have a little look at the Hagbjörns Cafe as well. But yeah, it seems that they've got quite a few interesting films at the cinema actually, so I would recommend that you go and have a little look at that. It really is quite cool. But that's the kind of unofficial tap room, if you like, for Stigbergets and OO Brewing in Gothenburg, so definitely worth checking out. But originally the idea that these guys had was to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, and this led to them kegging the beer and selling it on to other pubs, and eventually to bottling it beginning in November of 2014. But the original beers that they were producing were English and German styles, but of course what really made their name was when they started to focus on the more hoppy American beer styles. The original brewer was Ole Anderson, who is the co-owner of OO Brewing. He stayed with them until about April of 2017, and he was the creator of the GBG Beer Week beer for 2016, the Amazing Haze, and then also the Narangi, which was released under the OO name. And these are three of the kind of cult classic Swedish hazy New England IPAs. The other one I would include in that would be the New Sweden IPA from Opigors. And you know, if Brewski had a regular range, brewski from Helsingborg, they would have something included in there as well. Those, Stigbergets Brewing brewski, and I think, the Opigords did the one beer. Those guys are the ones who really kind of helped push the New England style here in Sweden, I would say. But now he was replaced for a period of time after he left by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds in Munster in Indiana, near Chicago, over in the States. And quite soon after that, they moved to a brewery at Partihalarna as well, and they were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time there. This allowed them to expand the company quite a little bit, and they also began working on some sour beers at that point as well. I do need to try and review some sour beers from Stigbergets, actually. I've not really touched upon those on the channel, come to think of it. But they started selling their beers in 440ml cans at this point as well, and this allowed them to export the beers a lot more. And they currently have a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, in England, and also Lucas Munraid, who used to work for All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the Gothenburg area. But they moved to a new brewery in Ringön and in summer of 2020, and they're apparently considering brewing some lambic beer as well there. So that should be quite interesting. But they're saying that this brewery has the facilities for like swimming and also for a bar and things like that. They're wanting to create some kind of experience brewery, as they put it. That's what I read in the Beer News article, so I'll be curious to see if they can get that opened up throughout 2021. I think the plan was to have it opened for sometime this year, so hopefully COVID doesn't restrict them too much on that, and it will be interesting to go and visit that at some stage. But they opened up a bar in Stockholm in April of 2020, if I'm remembering rightly, the exact month, and they also have their own folköl shop in Gothenburg as well. For those of you watching outside of Sweden, folköl is anything that is 3.5% and below. It can be sold privately or in the supermarkets, basically. Anything above that has to go through Systembolaget, the state-owned alcohol shop. But yeah, as of March 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 100 different kinds of beer, and they seem to be diversifying their styles a little bit these days. But mainly, their releases have all been different kinds of New England IPAs and things like that. That's what they've really focused on over the last few years. But there are other things in there. There's been sours, there's been imperial stouts, a couple of barley wines and stuff like this. But yeah, in recent times, they have been pushing out a few different styles. Actually, there's a black IPA coming out this month, which I need to take a look at for sure. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. As I told you before, these guys are one of the most recognisable Swedish breweries these days. So yeah, I would recommend that you check out these guys if you get the chance. So yeah, that's it for the moment then. So yeah, check if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So as you can see, the artwork in this beer is very, very similar to what we've had from the Rauch beer before. There you can see the Ringöbräu thing, and I think this little thing they have here is a sort of outline of their new factory, if you like. But yeah, 440ml can, this one, and I think it goes together really nicely. There you can see the Stigbergets, the Stigbergets brewery symbol on that, which is quite nice. And yeah, as I said, a 4.5% Helles lager beer. This one, the Ringöbräu Helles. That thing in German is annoying to say, Bräu. Yeah, it's quite difficult to say that. But yeah, 4.5% Munich German style Helles beer. So yeah, this I think should be quite interesting. I think I paid roughly, I've got a feeling I paid like 27 or 28 Swedish kroners for this beer. So that would translate roughly to about €2.80 for the can, about £2.50 I guess sterling, and then maybe about $3.25 American, something like that, just so those of you watching abroad can get an idea of the price range. I maybe should have used my tankard for this one actually, but you know, what can you do? So yeah, Helles basically in German of course means light, and for those of you that aren't familiar with it, a lager beer is defined as a cold fermenting yeast. Usually lager yeast ferments between, I think it's about 8 and 12 degrees if I remember rightly, and you call that bottom fermenting yeast. And yeah, that is what defines a lager beer. Ales of course ferment at, you know, around like 16 to 18 degrees I think it is, and those are top fermenting yeasts that you use for those. So yeah, that is your definition of a lager beer. Helles, as I say, is basically the German word for light blonde, if you like. These beers can sometimes be a little bit hazy. You get the Dortmunder Helles, which is a little bit more heavy, which is a little bit more kind of hoppy, and you also get the Munich Helles, which is a little bit more bready. And then the Czechs have a variant of this beer as well, which is called the Svetli. And the Czech beers, generally speaking, are a little bit more kind of yeasty and bready than the German ones are. The German ones, in my experience, tend to be a little bit more kind of crisp. But yeah, lager beers, basically German and Czech styles, although you do have the Vienna lager as well, which is a lovely, lovely style of beer. I would love to see one of those from Stigbergets at some point as well. A Vienna lager would be awesome. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, when we poured it, it poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say, perfect white head. That has just kind of faded away a little bit. It is quite frothy, come to think of it, when you look at it. It does look very, very nice. And as you can see, the beer is crystal clear. So yeah, looks very, very nice. Lovely kind of crystal clear Helles, this one. So yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but I mean overall it looks very nice and pretty much what you would expect of a Helles style lager beer. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer, definitely. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we got on with this one. As I say, nothing surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. So yeah, let's go for it. Oh yeah, it does smell really authentic actually. And yeah, this is one of the things that I always say in these reviews when it comes to, you know, reviewing beers that are like Munich Helles, you know, Schwarzbiers, Dunkels, Tmavis, Chernies, all of these kind of things. What I look for in these more traditional style beers is authenticity. How close do they taste to, you know, the likes of the Augustiners and all of these kind of things. That's what I would say I look for in these beers, and I can say straight away with this one, it does smell really very nice and very authentic. So I think this one is going to be a good example. So yeah, straight away with this beer, you get that nice typical soft bread crusty kind of thing coming out of it. So it smells a little bit like a kind of fresh bread roll, if you like. It's got a little bit of that kind of thing going on. You get the softer white bread in there, but you do get a wee bit of crispness out of this. This is the thing for me that separates the German lagers from the Czech lagers. The Czech ones, as I said earlier, tend to be a little bit more kind of yeasty and sort of smooth, if that makes sense, whereas the German ones tend to be a little bit kind of more crisp and things like that. I've always found the German ones are a little bit kind of lighter and crisper, if that makes sense. The Munich lager, the Munich Helles, I should say, compared to the Dortmunder Helles, though the Dortmunder one is a little bit more hoppy than the Munich one, and the Munich one is a little bit more bready in my experience. So yeah, you can definitely tell with this one on the nose it is more of a Munich Helles, if you like, than a Dortmunder Helles. But yeah, so as I say, the backbone of this beer, nice kind of smooth white bready notes in there, a good bit of a bread crusty quality, which I really like. And yeah, I think it goes together really nicely. Yeah, sort of soft white bready notes, as I say, some nice, as I say, a nice little bit of a kind of just bread crusty. You do get a wee bit of a graininess out of this beer, which is quite interesting, but it has what you'd expect in the malty side of things. There's maybe a wee touch of a biscuity. I do get a wee tiny touch of like a biscuity sweetness in this one, and the crispness does make me wonder if there's a little touch of Pilsner malt in here, because there is just something. Pilsner malt's a bit of an annoying one to kind of describe in terms of aroma and flavour and stuff like that, because to me Pilsner malt is a little bit more like a kind of vibe thing, but Pilsner malt adds a lot of crispness into beers, like I said. So yeah, the aroma out of this beer I think is very authentic and kind of captures it quite well. So yeah, white bready base, good little bit of bread crustiness in there, a good bit of graininess, and then there's also some sweet kind of biscuity, caramelly sort of things in this beer as well, which I think goes together very, very well. That's your malt base. I don't think there's too much more to it than that, to be honest with you, but you wouldn't expect anything more of a Helles. These beers are designed just to be sessionable, drinkable sort of things. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, you know, it smells, I'm curious as to what hop they would have used in this. You know, would they have gone with a Hallertau, a Tettnanger, or might they have used like a Satz or even a Styrian Goldings or something, because it does smell just a touch different from some of the German hops actually. It could be a combination of things, come to think of it. But yeah, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. You get a wee bit of herbal quality in there, and it's the herbal notes actually that are making me think that it might have another hop other than German in here. The floral notes are quite bright, And that is a kind of typical sign of German hops. So the hoppy side of this beer, I think, is giving me a little bit of mixed signals. So yeah, there's a wee bit of a kind of, there is a little bit of a kind of, there is a little bit of a sort of, yeah, kind of brighter floral note to the beer, and then you've got a bit of grassiness in there as well. And the grassiness, I think, you know, the grassiness has a wee bit of a zesty kind of thing to it as well, which I really quite like. The more that I smell of this beer, I'm actually starting to get a wee touch of a kind of almost woody note out of this one, and it must be from the yeast actually. I've had this kind of aroma, this kind of almost slightly farmhousey, woody kind of thing, crackery notes maybe. I think that is something to do with the yeast actually, and I've had this in a few beers actually. So this is one of the things that makes me want to take the Cicerone qualification, so I can sort of use my chemistry knowledge and kind of identify what these things are. But it does have a wee bit of that crackery sort of yeasty kind of thing coming out of it, I think, as well. But yeah, definitely a nice little bit of a kind of grassy element to the beer. It's got a wee bit of zestiness, and you've also got some really nice you've got some really nice sort of just light fruity notes to it. I mean, there's a little bit of a pear, there's a little bit of an apple, maybe a wee bit of a slightly lemony note in there. So yeah, pear, apple, a little bit of a lemony kind of quality. These are all things that you would expect from these are all kind of things that you would expect from the from a Munich style Helles beer. This one, I really like how the aroma of this goes together. It does, as I say, come across as very authentic, although there's one or two little kind of things in there that are quite interesting. But yeah, let's just fire the last of it in the glass and we'll have a taste of it then. Curious to see how this Stigbergets Helles turns out. So yeah, this one is the Ringöbräu Helles, coming in at 4.5% ABV, released as part of the local Småskaligt for March of 2021 through Stigbergets here. I'm just curious to see what this has in store for us. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Yeah, it's another pretty solid beer actually. Yeah, that is really nice actually. First impression is it's got a bit of a slightly more kind of prominent graininess to it than you'll get in the likes of, you know, the Augustiners and things like this. It's got a little, I would say this beer there is just a little bit of a kind of more graininess and dryness coming out of the beer in the beginning. So that could be, my first instinct is to say that it's a bit of Pilsner malt. I do think there's a bit of Pilsner malt in this one, just because you get a bit of that kind of dryness out of this beer, and there's just something in my head saying that that's Pilsner malt that's doing that. So yeah, it is a little bit of a kind of drier, slightly almost grainier feeling Helles, this one, which is quite interesting. But it's a lovely beer, this one. So yeah, I think this goes together really nicely, this one. I'm going to say thumbs up to Stigbergets for this one. I think they've pulled off a nice Helles here. It does have a few kind of Pilsnery elements to it, like I said, but you know, the breadiness, the Helles style, the Helles side of things really comes out a little bit more in the aftertaste, if that makes sense. It really starts to show its colours a little bit more when you go into the aftertaste of it. But lovely beer, this one, and I'm curious to see how they do the more malty lagers as well. The Schwarzbiers, the Dunkels and the Doppelbocks are going to be interesting, and I do hope that they have a go. I do hope that they have a go at I do hope that they have a go at a Vienna lager as well. That would be pretty nice. If they have a go at some Czech things as well, that would be good, because I think when everyone thinks of these lager beers, they always think of the German side of things, but there's not so much attention paid to the more yeasty Czech ones. So it would be quite cool if they, you know, sort of did the, you know, change the name very slightly. I don't know what the Czech one would be. Would it be Ringöbräu or something like this? I'm not sure. But you know, it would be, no, Prazdroj I think in Czech means like original. That's like, I'm thinking Poljanski Prazdroj, yeah, Pilsner Urquell. But you know, that would be it would be, yeah, you could do Ringu Pivo or something like this and do the Czech lagers as well. That would be quite interesting. But yeah, as a sort of more Munich type lager beer, this one is quite interesting. So yeah, let's say thumbs up to thumbs up to Stigbergets for this one. But I would love to see them do Ringöbräu Pivo as well. That would be awesome. Yeah, but anyway, let's break down the flavour of this one for you then and describe it properly. So straight away across the middle of the palate, with this one you get a really nice, you get a very nice kind of, you can feel what I suspect is Pilsner malt. That forms the backbone of this beer. You can feel the Pilsner malt there, just giving you that kind of dry, sort of almost grainy vibe if you like. Then on top of it you get a nice kind of smooth, white bready kind of thing, and that's your kind of Munich malt, if you like. So as I say, for a Munich type Helles beer, this one is a little bit drier. Actually, there is a few Pilsnery elements to the beer, and if you go to that border region between the middle third and the back third of your palate, there is a fair wee bit of a kind of bread crusty quality coming out of the beer as well. So I like how that goes together. Actually, I do like how that kind of pieces together. So yeah, the way that the flavour sort of works out in this one, I think, is really, really nicely done. So yeah, that side of the beer is very, very interesting. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, it's definitely, you're getting more and more of that kind of grainy or Pilsnery type malt out of this one. There is a wee bit of breadiness there, but yeah, for me the back third of the palate is definitely a bit more kind of grainy and things like that. It's almost got a wee bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of thing coming out of it, so you can feel that it sort of thickens up a wee bit. It just kind of, the back third of your palate just thickens up a wee bit, and then in the middle, in that border region, as I say, you've got a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing, and then you have you've just got those bready notes that I was talking about. You might get one or two little tiny woody type elements out of the beer the further you go into the aftertaste, but yeah, it's a fairly straight shooting malt base for me. Pilsner malt underneath, a sort of bready Munich malt, I think, sitting on top of that. Maybe you'll get a few elements of biscuity notes in the middle third of your palate as well. So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. This definitely one of the drier Helles type beers that I've come across actually, but that's because of the Pilsner malt, definitely. So yeah, it's a bit, in terms of authenticity, it's a little bit hard to place this one in that sense, because it might give you the impression that it's more of a Dortmunder Helles in that sense, because the Dortmunder is a little bit drier and a little bit more bitter, if you like, whereas the Munich Helles is a wee bit more kind of bready and things. I'm not sure if that's what they were going for, something kind of in between, because you've got these two sort of sub-styles of the Helles. But yeah, certainly a little bit drier and a little bit more kind of grainy than some of the other ones that I've had. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make about this beer. But on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, it's got a little bit of earthiness, as I say, and as you move further forward from that, it develops a little bit of a herbal character, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you can feel there's a nice little bit of a sort of spicy, floral aromatic note out of this one, and the level of spiciness that it has does make me wonder if it's Czech Sats that's in this, or Zhatits as the Czechs would call it, because it just feels a little bit more kind of spicy than some of the German ones. The other alternative would be that they would use something like Pearl or Hercules, one of the slightly stronger alpha acid, one of the slightly higher alpha acid German hops, because the traditional ones, Hallertau, Tettnanger, if I'm remembering rightly, those tend to be about 4.5% alpha acid. Then you've got a few other ones, like I say, Pearl and Hercules, that are higher than that. I think Hercules is about 8% alpha acid, or 7 or something like this. So yeah, there are other alternatives that can be used with these in these sort of Czech style beers, if you like. So it's interesting, definitely interesting. The hoppy side of this beer, I think, is quite nice. I think they've used one of the slightly higher alpha acid hops in this one from Germany, or some Czech Sats, because it just feels a bit spicier. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, the beer's definitely lighter and grassy, and I think that suits it quite nicely. So on that front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go to the border region between middle and front third of your palate, you get more of a, say, you get a little bit more of that kind of bread crusty sort of thing actually, so you can feel a little bit of a kind of fluffy white bread underneath and a bit of a bread crusty kind of thing. Then underneath that you've got a little bit of a smoother white bready type quality as well, so that's an interesting point to make with this beer, I have to say. I like how that goes together for sure. So yeah, for me that works out. It does work out very, very nicely in that sense. So yeah, on the fruity side of things as well, I would say it is kind of typically what you'd expect. There's, you know, it's if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a more kind of concentrated citrusy thing, but as you move further forward you start to get peary esters out of it. You start to get a little bit, you know, you get a peary ester, you get a little bit of an appley sort of thing. You might be forgiven for saying there's a wee touch of apricot or something, and as you reach the kind of front edge there is a wee bit of that kind of lemony citrusy sort of thing that mixes in with the kind of grassy element to the beer. So overall there's nothing really surprising about the flavour profile of this one. As I say, it's one of the more dry examples of a Helles that I've come across, which I suspect is down to Pilsner malt. It's got a little bit more bitterness to it as well, a little bit more spiciness, and I think they're maybe using Sats, Czech Sats, or you know, like Hercules or one of the slightly slightly higher Alphas or German hops in here. So yeah, it's a few interesting points to be made about this one. So it's an interesting Helles, this one. It's not the, I would say, it's maybe not the most authentic one that you're going to come across in a sense because of the Pilsner malt. There's quite a few Pilsner elements to this beer, and it is slightly more spicy in things. And it doesn't kind of attach itself more, you know, it doesn't seem to attach itself to the Dortmund style things or the Munich style of things. But you know, you're going to get variations like this from brewery to brewery. So yeah, you know, it's fair enough to play around with the beer in that sense actually. But yeah, it's an interesting beer, this one, and I think it's cool to see Stigbergets experimenting a little bit with the more kind of German style beers, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm curious to see what the more malty ones turn out like actually, because I was really impressed with the Pilsner that these guys did, so I can understand why they would put a bit of Pilsner malt in this, but I'd be curious to see what the Dunkel and the Schwarzbier and the how do you say that, if they do a Doppelbock or a Vienna Lager, I'd be curious to see how those turn out. But I was surprised at this one being as dry as it is, because you know, the Rauch beer was quite bready in a sense, and it had quite a lot of the Czech element with it, so I'm surprised that they went for such a dry. I'm surprised that they put quite, you know, that amount of Pilsner malt or whatever and bitterness and things in this beer that they did, but it works out nicely. As I say, I think this is it's a nice beer, this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. I'm just sort of over-analysing probably in my mind at this stage, but yeah, I get excited about these German beers. I do get excited about these, so yeah, bear that in mind. But yeah, definitely an interesting one, let's just say that. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, what would we say about that? It's I'd say that it's kind of at the top end of light-bodied, bottom end of mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth. It does have a fair degree of oiliness to it, this one, for a Helles as well. Like I said, overall, the malty side of things, it does have a bit of dryness, which I suspect is Pilsner malt. It's got a wee bit of smoothness that comes out the further into the aftertaste, and there's a little touch of biscuity note in the middle of your palate, definitely. So it does have a slight degree of sweetness. In terms of bitterness, I think this one's a little bit higher. I think this might be about 25 or even 30 IBUs. It does feel like it has a wee bit of hoppy bitterness to it. And then on the fruity side of things, it's what you'd expect, you know, pears, a little bit of apricot, apple kind of notes and things like this too. But yeah, the beer does develop a bit of smoothness and a bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste with it. So yeah, slightly drier kind of Helles, if you like. It's difficult to place it between the Munich and the Dortmund, like I said, but definitely an interesting beer, and I'm just glad to see Stigbergets continuing with these kind of traditional style beers that they've been doing over the last little while. So kudos to them for that. But yeah, I think that's probably a good place to leave it for this review. I look forward to the next Ringöbräu installment next month. I don't know when the next release is going to actually be announced through Systembolaget, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, should be interesting. But yeah, this one was the Ringöbräu Helles, coming in at 4.5% ABV from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Ringen in Gothenburg. Enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to the next releases in the series, like I said, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy the reviews. So thank you again for watching. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Bryggeri. Do let me know if there are any other good lager producers in Sweden actually, or let me know some good Hellas beers I should have a look at, because I love this style, and as I said, it's cool to see Stigbergets doing this one. But thank you again for watching, as I said, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. This one, the Ringöbräu Hellas, 4.5% from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden. Slanja, skål, cheers.